Hello, 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 and welcome everybody. We're getting ready to do this podcast, episode 17 of the Jon Loveless Show. So you're here for the live recording. I hope you enjoy it. Getting ready to start in 3, 2, 1. You are listening to the Jon Loveless Show, episode 17. All right. Show intro in 3, 2, 1. Wait a second. There we go. All right. Show intro in 3, 2, 1. Greetings, Internet dwellers. It is I, Jon Loveless, your Admiral here, ready to bring everything that you need to know to you in a timely fashion. We're happy to be here. I'm happy to join you today. And there's some weird, interesting things going on here that I want to talk to you guys about. Thank you so much for listening and watching. If you're watching on YouTube, hi, how you doing? You can see me. If you're listening to the podcast after the fact, you can't, but you can imagine my pretty face, and hopefully that'll give you some temporary satisfaction. I am your Admiral. I am your the bearer of good news and the bearer of bad news and all manner of things in between. So let's cut to the chase. I don't want to beat around the bush too much today. I'm thinking about shaking some things up here on the Jon Loveless Show, because up till now I've been trying to really do this positive reinforcement thing, this motivational self-help thing, and in the meantime I'm watching the country burn, and I say that metaphorically, because obviously the country's not burning. But it's not that the country hasn't been burning. I mean, everything from the riots last summer to the Capitol riots on January 6th. I mean, things have been up in arms, and there still are to a large degree. A lot of things going on in the news today. But I was content up till now to just allow, the professionals to handle these kinds of things, to just allow, people like, the professional commentators that I like. Now, newsflash, and for those of you that don't know, I am and have been for the longest time and continue to remain and probably will stay forever, a hardcore conservative. I just absolutely am hardcore conservative. I'm a Republican. I believe in conservative values. I believe in free market economy. I believe in, being free to live your life the way you want to. I believe in the Second Amendment rights. I believe in, pro-life. Abortion is wrong. I believe, the separation between church and state is fundamental from the state's point of view, which means that the state should not be dictating my religion to me. I believe in personal freedom, the right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, all of that stuff. I believe in personal accountability, personal responsibility, all these things that are conservative. Man, I'm diehard on all that stuff. Super patriotic, love this country, and think that in many ways this country's headed in the wrong direction. But I was content to just sort of let all that stuff ride, to just ignore it for the most part. I was content to do that because I had other things going on. I said, you know what, I'm trying to build a brand here, and I think I can help people with some positive motivation, some self-help stuff. And I love that subject matter. I really do. I love talking about self-help. I love talking about, you can do it if you put your mind to it. Single-minded focus can accomplish anything. The fear of failure will hold you back. If you believe in yourself, you can overcome anything. All that stuff. I really, a lot of people just roll their eyes when they hear that kind of stuff. I really love that stuff. And it's going to be a strong part of my message in whatever thing I'm doing. Well, online, social media, podcasting, YouTubing, blogging, whatever it is. I mean, that's always going to be incorporated in that. But I said, you know what? I really got to steer away from politics. I really got to stay away from current events and news and things like that. I said, because if I get too radical with that stuff, if I get too in your face with that stuff, if I really start talking about current events and issues and things like that, I'm going to eliminate half my audience. I'm just absolutely out of the door, going to, half my audience is gone. It's like, because if you're liberal, then you are not going to want to hear what I have to say. And that's just the way things tend to be. We tend to exist in silos. We tend to exist in places where, you want to, in echo chambers, where you want to hear your views that you believe reverberated back to you. And you enjoy that. It's what you like. You want some confirmation that the things you believe to be right and good and true are right and good and true. And you want people to tell you that. So if you're liberal, you're listening to liberal media outlets tell you how bad Donald Trump is, how bad Republicans are, all this stuff, reaffirming your worldview. If If you're conservative, then you're listening to the other side. You're listening to maybe Fox News, although Fox News is not as conservative as they used to be. You're listening to people like Mark Levin and Sean Hannity and Glenn Beck and Ben Shapiro and those guys. And it was, I said, you know what? Those guys are all professionals. You do not need another conservative podcaster, YouTuber, talking about these things. You just absolutely don't need it. And then an odd thing happened last week. Well, not odd. It was kind of expected, but it was odd in the way it affected me. On the 17th, Rush Limbaugh passed away. I have a kind of an unusual relationship with Rush Limbaugh. Most people agree that Rush Limbaugh was the biggest voice in conservative media. Most people find that and acknowledge that how important he was. He was off the charts important. As for what he was able to do, what he was able to accomplish, Rush Limbaugh single-handedly saved AM radio. That, AM radio was the predominant form of radio in the old days, the 50s, 60s, 70s. And then FM came out. And when FM came out, it was such a superior format. It was such a superior kind of radio that AM was quickly dying. And because AM was quickly, if you check the AM band in the 80s, man, there was nothing on the radio on the AM band. It just was non-existent. And Reagan was president in the 80s, for those of you that are too young to remember. And in 87, Ronald Reagan ended what was called the Fairness Doctrine. So the Fairness Doctrine was this idea that was instituted by JFK back in the 60s, that if you're going to have political viewpoints on the radio or on TV or whatever, then you had to have a fair amount of time on both sides, which meant that if you had one conservative talk show host who did an hour radio show, you had to have another hour immediately following that from a liberal host. And so the audience, generally for the most part, didn't want to hear that. They generally didn't want those kinds of opinions forced down their throat. They didn't want it was not a good scene. And it meant that people like Rush Limbaugh or whoever they were really didn't have an opportunity to create a national program, because the Fairness Doctrine suppressed them. Because if you had more conservative voices, then none of the radio stations could afford to hire you, because we already have too many conservatives on the radio now. And so we need more liberals. And so it kept people like Rush out of the forefront. In 87, Reagan ends the Fairness Doctrine. So the Fairness Doctrine goes away, which meant that radio stations were free to program however they wanted. Radio stations were free to put whatever host that could hold the audience's attention on the radio for as long as they want. And as long as they maintained FCC standards of decency, you weren't allowed to curse and things like that, then they could get on there and say pretty much whatever. And it was at that point, shortly after that, in 88, that Rush Limbaugh began his national radio broadcast show. And Rush Limbaugh was so popular that the dying medium that was AM radio was quickly revived and became a powerhouse. And from that branched all other what we call alternative media. He single-handedly created like sports talk radio. The idea that ESPN radio and all that stuff wouldn't exist without Rush Limbaugh, because AM radio was dying before him. He single-handedly created all conservative media outlets. So if you like Fox News, if you like Tucker Carlson, if you like Sean Hannity, if you like Glenn Beck, if you like Ben Shapiro, if you like any of those guys, none of those guys would have a job today if it wasn't for Rush Limbaugh. Because prior to Limbaugh, all of your news came from extremely liberal sources. New York Times, NBC, CBS, ABC, CNN was kind of a relatively new thing in the 80s. LA Times, all your newspapers, all your TV, all your radio, everything was liberal. Rush Limbaugh was the first serious conservative voice on the right to gain national prominence. And when it did, it sort of caught fire. And because of that, in the late 90s, Fox News became a thing. I think it was late 90s. I'm not sure exactly when Fox News debuted, but I think it was late 90s. And conservative talk show hosts all up and down the AM dial became a thing. And then we get into the 2000s and the 2010s, and podcasting takes off. And then now you've got a whole slew of conservative people doing podcasting and internet radio shows and stuff. None of that stuff, you got the Daily Wire, you got the Blaze, you got all of these conservative outlets that exist because of Rush Limbaugh. He was huge. He was the kingmaker. He was somewhat single-handedly responsible for the Republicans taking back Congress in the early 90s, making Newt Gingrich the Speaker of the House. The first time Republicans had held Congress in something like 40 years. And so I'm not going to say he single-handedly did that, but he was a huge instrument in causing that to happen. And the reason why was because Rush Limbaugh had the ability to reach out to the common man, the everyday man, and speak to him in a way that all the bigwigs and pundits on TV and stuff didn't. They were generally talking over top of the heads of your construction workers, your blue collar workers, your truck drivers, all these people that were listening on the radio. All these bigwig pundits, you had William F. Buckley and people like that back in the day, but they were so intelligent and so well educated, so well articulated that a lot of times it didn't connect with the average working guy. And then here's Rush Limbaugh with talent on loan from God, standing on the radio talking to people about everyday things, about what he believed, and it really connected with the average everyday guy. And so Rush Limbaugh was able to build this huge audience. He was a huge political influence. Conservatism came back in a huge way after that, and he was responsible for all of that. And it just, he attributes it to just luck and good timing and the grace of God, and the whole thing worked out really good for him. My relationship with Rush Limbaugh, and the reason I bring all this up is because last week on the 17th, we got the sad news that Rush Limbaugh passed away. For those of you that don't know, or maybe don't follow these things, Rush Limbaugh had been diagnosed early in 2020 with advanced stage 4 lung cancer. And they had held out some hope for a while that Rush Limbaugh might be able to beat this horrible disease. And he was doing good, and at the first they told him that he'd be lucky to make it to election day, and he made it to election day. It was a sad day from his point of view because the candidate he was supporting didn't get elected or reelected. But he made it, man. He was doing really good. But then somewhere around the late fall, the cancer doctor said, you know what, our treatments and stuff at this point have been going really good, but things have suddenly got worse, which oftentimes happens when you're fighting cancer. And all this stuff is extremely relevant to me as a cancer survivor, as somebody who had a liver transplant, less than a year ago, who had stage 4 liver cancer, and somebody who's in remission now and doing extremely well. This was, I felt like to some degree Rush was a brother in that fight. And so I really felt horrible when I found out that he had died. Now, so the impact to the industry, to the radio industry, and to conservatism and conservative movement is huge. It's absolutely huge. My history with Rush is kind of interesting. Because, you don't live on this earth and not know who Rush Limbaugh is. If you were alive in the 90s, his name was here and there and everywhere in the 2000s, and it was hard to miss. My personal history politically is that all through late high school, especially in my college years, man, because I got over to college and they were just, the indoctrination that exists on college campuses is so powerful and so strong. And as a young, impressionable college student, you want so bad to impress your college professors that and to be accepted and to be part of the group and to fit in, that you will swallow that red pill or blue pill, I'm not sure which one it is. So you'll swallow it and without even blinking, just yes, absolutely. And so, and I did that, and I was a staunch Democrat for the early part of 2000. Well, from the mid 90s, because that was about the time I was getting out of high school. I didn't much care before I was out of high school. But by the time I got out of high school, into the 2000s, I was a staunch Democrat because of college indoctrination. I didn't even really pay attention to the news much. It didn't matter to me. Didn't care too much, I remember the first time being really concerned about a political campaign was the 2000 election of George Bush versus Al Gore, and being so horribly upset when Bush won that election. And feeling like, man, the Supreme Court is just rigged. They stole this election. Boy, would that set the tone of political conversation for the next 20 years. Rigged election, they stole it. Well, we would hear that over and over and over again. But I remember being extremely upset, thinking that Bush was a fraudulent president. Again, this is where this all started, this current recurring theme that we all seem to have about fraudulent elections and stolen and illegitimate presidents. And I remember thinking, being hugely upset at that. But life went on. I got over it. And I was still in college because I had taken a break from college and went back to try and get finished up. And it was September 11th, 2001. And as an elective, I had taken a college golf course because you had to have like a physical education elective of some kind. And they offered a half credit golf course. And I had newly started playing golf, and I thought that was cool. I want to play golf. And they have a college course where you can learn how to play golf. And I was excited about it. So I was enrolled in this golf class. And it was an early morning class, 8 o'clock in the morning. And we had to go to the course, and we had to follow the instructor's comments about what kind of practicing to do and what kind of swings to take. And so, but once we got to a certain place where we're all kind of knew what we were doing, and the college owned its own golf course. And he said, you can just go play and report back to me how you shot. So it was an early, I think Tuesday morning, if I'm not mistaken, on September the 11th, 2001. And I had just played 9 holes of golf at like 8 o'clock in the morning. Dew was heavy on the grass. I mean, it just, it's a September day. It was beautiful, but it was early morning, big dew on the grass. And I come into the clubhouse after my 9 holes because I'm getting ready to leave because I got to go to my next class at like 9 o'clock or something. And I look up on the TV and I see what's going on in New York. I see the World Trade Center and the planes and all that. And I was just shocked, man. And it rocked me to the core. And so much so that I was stuck to the news for the next however long. And part of being stuck to the news meant that I needed some news fix all the time. And it occurred to me as I was commuting back and forth to school, I had about an hour drive back and forth to school. It occurred to me that there are news radio stations on the AM dial that just talk about news. And so I could tune those stations in and listen to news. And so I was able to get my feed on what was going on with the World Trade Center and who was responsible and what were we going to do about it and all that stuff. And the station that I landed on to get that information was mostly a local station with local host. And so I wasn't listening to Rush at the time, but I knew he was there. And but I wanted a more local take on it. And I was listening to local hosts, people in my area. But that whole process started me kind of being addicted to talk radio. Because once I got hooked on that, I was stuck. And so every day, no matter where I was driving, I had talk radio on. And I'm listening to all kinds of shows. I'm listening to not only my local shows, but some national shows. Jim Cramer had a financial show. Clark Howard had a financial show out of Atlanta. I was listening to that. Neil Bortz out of Atlanta. I was listening to that. Sean Hannity. I was listening to some of that. Just a bunch of shows. Dave Ramsey about finances. I was listening to that. Just a bunch of stuff that I was listening to, but not really Rush, because Rush, I don't know, for whatever reason, didn't appeal to me at the time. He just didn't stick out to me as somebody I wanted to listen to. There were a lot of other voices that I liked to hear better than his, I thought, but I hadn't really listened to him at all because Rush Limbaugh had been presented by the media as kind of a blowhard, know-it-all, full of himself. And that turned me off. The idea that he thinks he knows everything. I'm not listening to that guy. I'd rather have somebody a little more down home, a little more honest, and so I didn't give Rush a chance. And I even remember being at work, and this is probably mid-2000s, 2004, 2005, 2006, something like that. And I remember being at the office one day, and there's a convenience store across the street from me. And at this convenience store, a Pepsi truck rolls up, one of the big trucks that pull in like 18-wheeler. And the sides of the back of the trailer are those sort of garage door style slide up and down sides that roll up and down. And so I remember seeing him over there, but I didn't think too much about it because he's delivering to the convenience store across the street. But I could hear this noise outside the office. This noise is kind of like, and it was kind of muffled, and I was like, what is that noise? It sounds like it's coming from outside. And so I walked to the door, and I opened the door of my office that leads outside, and there, that with his windows rolled down, was that Pepsi driver out walking around with his two-wheel dolly with like 12 packs of Pepsi on it, and he's wheeling them in and out of the store, but he's got his truck parked, the key's still on, and his windows are rolled down, and he's blaring Rush Limbaugh. And the idea was that he's so addicted to this that he has to hear it. So in order to continue to hear it, because this, I mean, keep in mind, this is prior to iPhones and mobile phones that could listen to live streaming radio and stuff on it at the time. So if you want to listen to this, you had to listen to it on the radio, on your car or whatever. And so he's got his windows rolled down in this 18-wheeler truck, and he's blaring Rush Limbaugh. And he's like, I am Rush Limbaugh, and we're conservatism, and we're doing and so forth. And George W. Bush is going to lead the war on terror, and blah, blah, blah. Rush Limbaugh. And I was like, oh, my God, he's listening to Rush Limbaugh. And I just remember thinking, God, what a blowhard. And turned around and walked back in my office. And then he eventually left. But, that I remember very distinctly thinking about Rush Limbaugh that day and how much geez, I can't stand that guy. Even though he's conservative, and I was transitioning from liberalism to conservatism, because when 2001 happened, I suddenly became very patriotic. Not that I wasn't anyway. I was always patriotic. I'm watching Rambo movies and things like that. I love patriotism. I was always a big 4th of July guy. I mean, red, white, and blue, land of the free, home of the brave, Lee Greenwood, God bless the USA, all that stuff. I was always patriotic, but suddenly everybody's uber patriotic. Suddenly there's a flag in every yard. You remember what it was like. And I was very, very patriotic at the time. And part of patriotism and conservatism are just double first cousins, man. They're very, very close to one another. And the more patriotic you become, the more conservative you tend to be. I don't know why. It just sort of happens that way. When you love this country, and when you love the red, white, and blue, and when you love our founding, and when you love the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, that all bleeds conservatism. It just absolutely does. Because what you love is the way this country was founded. Now, that's not to say, and again, this is not the point of this conversation. It's not to say that that we haven't had our share of problems and things we needed to overcome and things we needed to change. Obviously, when this country was created, 3/5 of a person for black people and all that stuff, and slavery, horrible, 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 horrible. All right, don't get me wrong. But it doesn't change the fact that this country was from its founding better than every country that had ever existed, because it believed, and it was written into our founding documents, that every man, woman, and child born on this earth was created equal in the eyes of God. And that applied even to the black men. Even though they didn't have all the same rights and privileges, they were still, our declaration said that they were equal. And it would take us some, 100 or more years, well, no less than 100 years. It would take us, like 80 years to get to the place where we would give them the same rights and privileges that everybody else enjoyed. And that was this horrible, horrible thing. But that was only possible. Slavery was only able to be ended because the idea of equality was woven into the founding documents of the United States, into the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And if those things hadn't been there, slavery wouldn't have gone away, at least not the way it did. So, again, I understand that the founding has problems, but when you're conservative, you tend to be nostalgic for better times that have come and gone. And part of that better times harkens back to the Constitution and back to the Declaration of Independence, the way this country was founded, and the idea and the principles of liberty that we all adhere to. And like I said, patriotism and conservatism are just double first cousins, man. If you love this country, just adore it. And part of the problem with liberalism is that it seeks so hard to fundamentally change the country into something that it's not. So there's that. But anyway, I was transitioning from liberal to conservative because I was becoming more patriotic. I was becoming more and more wrapped in the news, and I was becoming more and more interested in talk radio. And talk radio, for the most part, was conservative because liberals seem to have a monopoly on the mainstream media, TV shows, newspapers, things like that. But where talk radio is concerned, they got nothing going on. I mean, Air America was a thing for just a little while, and it failed horribly. In fact, the only liberal voice on radio probably is NPR. And NPR only exists because it's taxpayer subsidized. If it wasn't for that, NPR would probably go away. So I was transitioning. I was becoming more and more conservative, but Rush Limbaugh hadn't won me over yet. So fast forward from that to about 2013, and I was changing jobs. And I got a new job at a new company, and I'm working in that office, and I'm listening to talk radio on my computer, because now at this point, talk radio is streaming online. And so you don't actually have to listen to a physical radio to hear these things. And I'm looking for quality content to listen to on my streaming radio service on my computer while I'm doing my work. And at the 12 o'clock hour, I was just like, I can't find anything good to listen to. I guess I'll give Rush a try. And it didn't take but maybe a week or two of listening to Rush consistently to be completely sold out on the guy, to be completely, absolutely in love with everything Rush Limbaugh said, everything he did, his bombastic style, his attitude, everything about it. Everything that had turned me off about Rush prior were now all the things that I loved about Rush currently. And part of it was because that the media had done such a good job of poisoning my mind about how horrible Rush was. And the fact that I believed he must just be a conceited, horrible person. And when I got to listening to him, what I realized is that he was not such a horrible, conceited person, that he actually was just sort of bombastic as a joke, but that he actually was a very down-to-earth guy. And that he's explaining things to people in a real-world way that makes sense and that people could respond to. And now I understood why Rush had something like 27 million listeners. I mean, this is the largest audience on TV or radio. I mean, they're even the most popular cable news shows only get like 3 and 4 million viewers a night. Rush Limbaugh is on radio stations all across the country, and he's got something like 27 million listeners. It was a huge audience, and I finally understood why. Because I just absolutely fell in love with his entertainment style, his bombastic nature, his over-the-top attitude, and the fact that he put it out there exactly the way he felt about it, and exactly the way he saw it, and exactly the way it was, in his opinion, and he didn't apologize about it. And the left was always on his case, always attacking him, always coming against him, and he never faltered, never wavered. And he even sometimes said some things that he regretted. And I think he went back and apologized for some things that he may have said, but it wasn't because he had a bad philosophy. Maybe he was uninformed or misinformed about some issues, and he had to go back and say, listen, I've discovered the truth of this, and I figured it out, and I'm sorry. So what I said was accurate. He corrects himself when he makes mistakes, and he apologizes when he says something that's over the line. And I didn't know that about him. I had no idea Rush did that. And so so it became a part of my daily routine every day to listen to this guy opine on conservative values, how horrible the left is and what they were doing to tear down the country, and how it was important and relevant to me in my life, and do it in a fun and entertaining way. And listen to him go on about how much he loved the country and about how important it was and about how sacred our history is and everything. And I fell in love with the guy. And he quickly became, to where I am now, shortly before his death, quickly became to where he's my favorite radio news commentator. I mean, I listen to a lot of big names. I listen to Ben Shapiro, I listen to Glenn Beck. I even listen to Scott Adams, if you can believe that. Scott Adams got an interesting podcast. Everybody should listen to it. I don't always agree with everything Scott Adams says, the guy that creates the Dilbert comic strip. I don't agree with everything Scott Adams says, but he's entertaining to listen to, and he's got an insight that you might not appreciate. And so until you listen to it, then you will appreciate it. Scott Adams, somebody should listen to. I mean, I listen to Mark Levin, I listen to Steven Crowder, I listen to just a lot of people, and Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity occasionally. Rush Limbaugh was just my favorite. He just absolutely was my favorite. Nobody could match his style, his grace, the skill that he performed his show with, and just the way he carried himself on the radio was amazing. And you open those shows up, and he would go, "Here I am, Rush Limbaugh, America's anchorman, with talent on loan from God, doing this show with half my brain tied behind my back, just to make it fair." And when you hear that, your first reaction is like, "Oh my God, he thinks his crap doesn't stink. He thinks he's perfect." And no, it's not what it is at all. He's just being entertaining. He just wants to come across that way. One, because it drives the left crazy. And two, because it's like, ha ha ha, I got you again. That extreme self-confidence and belief that the things that you say are right and good and true because they are part of a value system that you believe are right and good and true was reassuring and is reassuring to many of his fans. It gives you a sense of security to hear it from him, a sense of authority. When Rush said it, it must be, it's almost like, yes, Virginia, if you see it in the sun, it's so. There is a Santa Claus. Well, if Rush had said it, then it was so. Not because it was necessarily from Rush, but because Rush does his homework and we have confidence in him. Now, it doesn't mean that Rush, again, like I said, never made a mistake, because he did. And when he did, he corrected himself and he apologized about it. But he went right back to work and he was continuing to deliver you good information. This is why I loved Rush, and this is why I continually listened to Rush for so long. And this brings me all of this brings me to this current epiphany. Let's call it that. Brings me to this current epiphany, in that the things that I am doing with my podcast and with all the stuff that I'm working on. It suddenly seemed like it didn't matter much. And that's the wrong way to look at it. It seemed like it might not be extremely important in comparison to who Rush was and what he was doing. I don't know if that makes any sense to you. So here I am talking about self-help and motivation, and there's nothing wrong with it. That's great content. And I enjoy consuming that content, which is why I wanted to help put it out. But here I am talking about self-help and motivation, and here's Rush fighting for the soul of the country. And so what he's doing is so much more important than what I'm doing, because all I'm trying to do really is build some brand awareness and trying to create a thing where I could try to reach out and help some people, and that's noble. But he's fighting for the soul of the country. I'm trying to create a name for myself, trying to get a website and get some awareness and get some people knowing who I am, so that I can, maybe, who knows, one of these days maybe do this for a living. That would be great. If I could transition from my 9-to-5 into doing, this self-help guru or whatever that I thought I was, then if I could do that as my new 9-to-5 instead of my old 9-to-5, then that would be great. That would that'd be like a dream come true. But I didn't have to worry about fighting for the soul of the country because I had Rush Limbaugh to fight that fight for me. And now Rush is gone. And there are a lot of people ready to pick up the torch and carry the mantle. You got your Sean Hannity's the second biggest name on radio is Sean Hannity. You got your Glenn Becks, who runs the largest premium subscription conservative news service on the internet. You got your Ben Shapiro, who nobody matches wits with Ben Shapiro that doesn't get their butts handed to him. This guy's on fire, right? So you got big names out there, Mark Levin and those guys. You got big names out there ready to pick up and carry on where Rush left off. But even those guys are not sufficient to the task. None of them can fill Rush's shoes. It just is impossible. Rush was larger than life, and these guys are all talented, but they're not on that level. They're just absolutely not on that level. And here I am thinking to myself, wow, Rush was doing something so big and so important and so huge. And here I am just trying to give people positive daily affirmations. There's nothing wrong with it, but it just seems, I don't know, inconsequential in comparison. And it inspires me to want to follow in Rush's footsteps. And so I think I have made a decision. I think I'm going to revamp everything that I'm doing here. I think I'm going to change everything about this show. I think that from this point forward, I'm going to do a current events and news and political analysis type show. And I'm still going to work in the other aspects of myself that I enjoy. into that. So I still intend to talk about positive affirmations and self-help and daily motivational things because it's a big part of who I am. I mean, Rush was including big parts of it. Rush would often talk about his love of Apple, his iPhones and iPads and iTunes and all this stuff. I mean, he was an Apple fanatic, an Apple fanboy, and he would take large chunks of his show sometime and just talk about those things. Because it was part of who he was. He was connecting with the audience, sharing things about himself. So there's nothing wrong with me doing the same thing. I can share my positive affirmation. I can share my self-help stuff. I can share my motivational things. And I think it'll be important to people, and people will like that. And I can also share my faith, which is, Rush, who, from all counts and purposes, I mean, he said on his own show that he was a Christian, that he had a very strong relationship with Jesus Christ, but he didn't talk about that stuff a lot. His brother, David Limbaugh, is actually a religious leader. He's a pastor, a minister. He writes novels, he writes books and things like that on the subject of spirituality and religion. But Rush never did that. Rush sort of kept his field on the political analysis, current events, and all that stuff, and he didn't talk too much about faith. But he did talk in his last few months about his strong relationship with Jesus and how it gave him strength to deal with the fight with cancer. So I know he had religion, but he didn't spend a lot of time talking about it. But I probably will. I will probably talk deeply about my faith in Jesus Christ because, unlike Rush, I actually am a minister of the gospel. I actually do have a religious background. I have a degree in theology. So this is a side that I can bring to the table that Rush wasn't able to. So the same way that Rush incorporated his love of golf, his love of Apple computers and Apple iPhones and equipment, his love of tech. I mean, he just was kind of a techie. The same way he talked about other things that he enjoyed. Then I'll talk about other things that are relevant and meaningful to me too. But at the end of the day, I think that the purpose of this show has to be about talking about conservatism, has to be talking about conservative values, patriotism, this country, the red, white, and blue, the USA, God, country, family, the values, the culture war. The culture war is huge. You can't say the wrong thing at the wrong time or you are canceled. You're gone. They will shut you down. And that's horrible. That's horrible that could be the case. And so that culture war needs to be fought. And I think the days of sitting, at least for me, the days of sitting on the sideline and not being an active participant in the battle for the soul of the country have to be over. Now, I have no aspirations or illusions even about what I'll be able to accomplish in doing this. I don't believe in my heart, at least at this point, that I'll ever be Rush Limbaugh big. In fact, I don't think that even Sean Hannity, who's the second biggest name on radio, I don't think he'll ever be Rush Limbaugh big. But the idea about being big is not important. It doesn't matter. I don't care if I have 5 listeners, if I got 10 listeners, if I got 20 listeners, or I got 20,000 listeners. It doesn't matter to me. The number is not important. The number is what's important is about putting out content that talks about the big issues, about what's important. It's about fighting for the soul of the country, which is what Rush Limbaugh was all about. And he has inspired me. And so I'm going to borrow a few things from Rush. I'm going to borrow his mission to fight for the soul of the country. I'm going to even borrow some of his catchphrases. You may hear me say, and I have done this before, not to copyright or not to steal anything from him, but just as sort of a tribute to him. But you'll probably hear me say, with talent on loan from God. You'll probably hear me say, half my brain tied behind my back, or some other catchphrases that Rush used because he inspires me. And I want to keep kind of some of the aspect that he brought. I want to keep it alive and continue to bring that to bear on a world that will listen to it. And my only outlet right now is YouTube and podcasting. That's it. That's the only way I can get my message out. I've got a blog, and I'll have to change the website and change the way it looks. Because I'm going to have to move kind of away from a you can do it, blog to a serious political analysis blog. And you know what? And here's the really scary thing about it is I'm kind of in over my head. Now, I'm an intelligent guy. I've got 2 degrees. I've got a degree in theology and I got a degree in business, and I pay attention to the news all the time. So I'm not stupid by a long shot, but when you get into this is deep water. When you start talking about the Paris Climate Accords or whatever it is, you need to know what you're talking about, or you're going to get slammed. I mean, your comments and your responses and things are going to be like, you're an idiot, and people won't listen to you. So that means I got to do a lot of research, got to do a lot of reading, got to do a lot of listening, got to do a lot of thinking about these issues. I got to start, reading, things that I hadn't been reading before, newsletter. I can actually start paying attention to the liberal news media to see what they're saying so that I'll know what's wrong with it. I feel like to some degree I'm in over my head and I'm insufficient to the task. But I think about Rush, and then Rush had to start somewhere, didn't he? I mean, Rush didn't come out of the womb knowing everything about conservatism and everything about liberalism and everything about patriotism and everything about everything. I mean, he had to learn as he went, right? So that's what I'll do. I'll learn as I go, and I'll do my best to be accurate as possible, and I will make mistakes. And the fact that I'll make mistakes doesn't deter me, doesn't keep me from wanting to try, because I know going in that I'll make mistakes. But if I correct those mistakes and I don't make them anymore, then I'll get better and better and better. And over time, I'll have a better and better show, and you'll like it better. So I hope that you'll stay with me on this journey. Now, just to kind of give you a preview of some of the things that we're going to talk about. Of course, we've talked about Rush here tonight, and but just a couple things real quick. The Florida agriculture chief has vowed to defy Governor Ron DeSantis' order to lower the state flags in honor of Rush Limbaugh. Now, this is interesting. Okay, now Rush Limbaugh, home state was Florida. For those of you that know Rush Limbaugh, I forget where he originated from. I should know this. I apologize. I know that he worked in different places around the country. I know he worked for the Kansas City Royals in Kansas City there for a while. I know he took a job. The first version of his Rush Limbaugh show was talking about politics and stuff. I think it was in Sacramento, California, before it went national. And after it went national, he actually moved to New York City. And he was in New York City a number of years, but at some point he got tired of the heavy taxation and the high cost of living in New York, and he moved to Florida. So Florida's been Rush Limbaugh's home state for a number of years. And Rush Limbaugh, proudly called Florida home. He enjoyed Florida. He loved Florida. And when he passed away, from his battle with lung cancer, Ron DeSantis announced Friday during a news conference that on the date of internment for Rush, when it's announced, we're going to be lowering all our flags to half staff. He went on to say, it's not much that needs to be said. The guy was an absolute legend. He was a friend of mine and a great person. But some Democrats expressed outrage over the Republican governor's decision to honor Limbaugh, who was idolized by many on the political right, but despised by many on the left. Fried, and I think this is the name of the agriculture commissioner, Nikki Fried, F-R-I-E-D. So it's either Fried or Fried. Surely her name's not Fried. I don't think that could be true. So I'm going to say it's Nikki Fried. But Fried, whom the Tampa Bay Times noted is the only statewide elected Democrat, the only statewide elected Democrat, issued a statement declaring outright that she will openly refuse to carry out the order. Lowering to half staff the flag of the United States of America is a sacred honor, she said, that pays respect to fallen heroes and patriots. It is not a partisan political tool. Therefore, I will notify all state offices under my direction to disregard the governor's forthcoming order to lower flags for Mr. Limbaugh, because we will not celebrate hate speech, bigotry, and division. Now, this is the most asinine thing ever. And it's asinine for a couple reasons. One, I don't know that Rush Limbaugh, despite how much I adore him, I don't know that he rises to the level of prominence necessary to get it's not like he was a congressman. It's not like he was a senator. It's not like he was a president or even a general or anything like that. I'm not sure that his death is as hard hitting to me personally as it is. I'm not sure it's worthy of half-staff flag lowering. Although on the one hand, maybe it is, because he was a recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Donald Trump gave him that at last year's State of the Union address. So he is an award recipient of this nation's highest civilian honor. That alone may be enough to say that the half flags lowering is warranted. However, that said, it all becomes a political mess now because Ron DeSantis, who has the right to order half-staff flags lowered if he wants to, has ordered them lowered. And so now she is openly defying that. She has accused Rush Limbaugh of spewing hate speech, bigotry, and division, which nothing could be further from the truth. Rush Limbaugh was not about any of that. He was somebody that believed in unity and bringing the sides together, but he did not believe that extreme leftist or liberalism was something that you could unify with, and he called it out for what it was. But he believed in the American people as a whole, and so he wasn't against people. He was against the ideology. He was against the political belief structure, the system. So he wasn't. He never said anything bigoted. Never said anything like that. And so she obviously, it's clear that she is just being a political pundit at this point. She's just being partisan. And the fact that she's openly defying her governor is a problem. Now, I don't know if there's anything, that DeSantis can do about it. At the end of the day, he's the governor and he has the right to do this, but she is also an elected official who doesn't answer to him. She doesn't serve at the pleasure of the governor. He can't fire her. He can't get rid of her. So, I don't know that there's anything he could do about it. I'll pay attention to the story and see what happens. But at the end of the day, it's just a lot of spouting off. It's just a lot of people, crying out for attention. And I think that's really what this is on her part. I think she probably has higher office aspirations, and this is a way for her to make a name for herself. But I don't know that it's entirely appropriate for DeSantis to request the half flags because Rush Limbaugh was a political figure and not just a national figure. I don't know. I'm double-minded about that. And see, here's the thing about you. Here's the thing about this show going forward is that unlike Rush, who I'm sure if he could comment on the story would have a clear-cut opinion and tell you exactly why he feels the way he does, I'm of two minds on the thing. And I'm fairly willing and able to share that with you. And so on the one hand, I feel like, well, DeSantis is the governor. He can order half flags lowered if he wants to. On the other hand, I don't know if I was him if I would have done it. Because Rush Limbaugh's a divisive figure. A lot of people don't like him. And he was purely a political figure. And he was not an elected official. And he was not a war hero. And he was not anything like that. But he was the Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient. So it's not too far off the mark. So, but I think that whether you want to credit Ron DeSantis with making a good choice or a bad choice here, I think this Nikki Freeze is just really, really being a crappy person here. I think she's really being a garbage person because she is openly defying the governor, not because for any other reason but her own political grandstanding. That's really all it is. She wants to seek higher office, and this is a way she can make a name for herself. That's all it's about. It's not about, rejecting hate speech. It's not about rejecting bigotry and division. It's not about any of that stuff. It's just about making a name for herself. That's all it is. And what may be, and I'm going to cover one more quick story. What may be the saddest topic of the day is the fact that the U.S. has now, as of today, officially passed the 500 million mark, people who have died from COVID-19. This is extremely, extremely sad. I think Biden was doing some kind of candlelit ceremony tonight about that. I hate it. It's just bad. This pandemic has ruined, if not ended, the lives of so many people. And not only there's 500,000 here in the U.S., but around the world, millions of people dead from COVID-19. It's just a horrible, horrible thing. It's just really, really bad. And my heart breaks for everybody that has died from this horrible disease. But my heart breaks for anybody that dies for any reason. My heart breaks for people that die in car accidents. But it's just really, really, really sad that so many people have been taken from us. Now, that said, I'm not entirely sure I trust the $500,000 person figure, but it's very high, even if that's off. And the reason I say I don't trust that figure is because I think a lot of hospitals and a lot of state agencies were reporting deaths and attributing to coronavirus that maybe weren't. And I have heard a lot of reports about this. I don't have any evidence to back anything up. This is just, so take it with a grain of salt. It's just, file this under rumors and insinuations. I've heard a lot of stories about people who've gone into the hospital with a heart attack or with some other disease and have died and have been chalked up to COVID-19 on the records so that hospital or that medical facility could receive extra money from the state or from the federal government because they were COVID-19 related death, even when they weren't COVID-19 related. Now, if the number's off, it's not off huge. I don't think that it's, it's 500,000, which clearly it's just 100,000. No, of course not. If it's not 500,000, it's 450, 475. I mean, it's right up there. So it doesn't change the fact that this horrible pandemic has had a huge impact on so many people. And it's just very, very, very sad. And hopefully this vaccine gets out. People, and that's the positive news. If you've been paying attention, about 19.4 million people have been fully vaccinated as of now. That's about 5.9% of the U.S. population. Far less than the estimated, 70 to 80% of Americans that need to be vaccinated to reach what we call herd immunity. But we're on the way. More people are being vaccinated every day. Now, I'm hesitant to take it because as a liver transplant, I'm current liver transplant recipient. I'm currently immunocompromised, which means that I got to be real careful what I let them put in me because it may affect me in ways that it might not affect the average person. And I got to be extremely careful about coronavirus because if it could kill regular people, theoretically, and I believe that God, makes me strong, but theoretically the coronavirus would tear through somebody like me and just wreak havoc and they would stand no chance. So I got to be very, very careful about that. But I'm also got to be very, very careful about taking any kind of certain kind of medication, even eating certain foods. They tell me I'm not allowed to eat because my immune system is extremely compromised. So because of that, I'm not going to take the COVID-19 vaccine until Cleveland Clinic, the hospital that did my transplant, sends me some kind of communication and says, John, we want you to have this vaccine. It's been approved for transplant recipients. It's safe, and you need to get it. And at that point, then, yeah, sign me up. I'll get it. But hopefully more and more people continue to get vaccinated. And even if I can't right away, we get to that threshold quickly that allows us to be immune to the disease. A lot of people are scared of it. A lot of people don't know. I mean, I had a friend who was getting ready to take the vaccine and they were absolutely worried to death about it. Didn't know what to do to them. So many people, and there's been a lot of horrible videos circling around the internet on places like TikTok and Facebook, where people have posted like, I had the coronavirus vaccine, and I developed these horrible symptoms. I developed Bell's palsy. I developed Parkinson's disease, like shaking and trembling. And people see that and they go viral. And so it's like 1 million people sees that video and like everybody's suddenly afraid to take the vaccine. That's unfortunate. I think at the end of the day, the vaccine is probably safe. My friend did go ahead and eventually have it and she's fine. That said, every human being is different and it's entirely possible that you may take the vaccine and you may have some kind of adverse reaction to that. But some people have adverse reaction even to the flu vaccine, so that's not unheard of. But for the most part, like 99.9% of people, it should be perfectly safe for. So everybody should seriously consider getting that vaccine when you have the opportunity to. We need to do the elderly people first, frontline workers first, and certain individuals that need to be vaccinated first. But then as soon as you're available to get it, you should probably get it. But that's an individual choice, and I support individual choice making, and you should get it because you want to get it. But I think it's a good thing. I think everybody should consider getting it. So these are the kinds of things we're going to talk about. And like I said, I won't have the answer to all these things. I'll have very strong opinions. When we get ready to talk about abortion, oh my God, abortion's horrible. I will tell you all about why I feel that way. And when we talk about, Israel, I'm going to say Israel's a great country. We need to support Israel. And I'm going to tell you all about why I feel that way. When I talk about taxes, I'm like, taxes are horrible. And then we have to pay some taxes because the government's got to function. But by and large, we pay too much in taxes. I'm going to tell you why I feel that way. And I'm going to share these things with you. And I'm also going to share personal life experiences with you. I'm going to share my beliefs about God with you. I'm going to share inspirational self-help things from time to time, not constantly, but from time to time. These are all parts of and aspects of who I am. And so I'm going to share them with you so that you hopefully can enjoy that and get to know me and get to the place where you enjoy hearing from me. And whenever the new show comes out, you'll like it and you'll want to hear it. All right, that's it for this time. And in the meantime, we're going to wrap this thing up. Go over to jonloveless.com, but that website needs to be revamped because of my new mission now. The website needs to be revamped, but go over to jonloveless.com. You can find links to all my social media. Email me, contact@jonloveless.com. Tell me what you think of this going forward. And be sure and subscribe on YouTube and to the podcast. and just be sure and check out everything that we're doing. We thank you so much. God bless you. That's it for this time. And until next time. And in the meantime, I am your Admiral, Jon Loveless. And I'll explain, if you don't know, why I call myself the Admiral next time. Have a good night. And we're clear. All right. Thank you, all those who watched on YouTube. Appreciate it. We will see you guys next time. Oh, hey, Jason Blevins on here. Sorry, Jason, man. I was kind of wrapped up. He says, hey, John, how are you? I'm doing good, man. Thank you so much for being in, and I hope you enjoyed it, and appreciate it. And look forward to maybe drop. If you see me online again, drop back in. Next time, I may try to recognize you before I, just blow you off. I wasn't trying to. And respond to you mid-show. Like I said, I was kind of in the zone there, and I just didn't. So sorry about that. So like I said, if all of you who are watching on YouTube and Facebook, thank you so much. Appreciate it, and we will catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.